I'm Leandra Letterman.
And I'm Allison Christians, and it's time to break into tax. Today, we're super happy to have with us Nicole Cammarota. She's Senior Counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel in Manhattan. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Nicole, could you tell us a little bit about your background before you started working at the Office of Chief Counsel?
So I was very lucky. I attended Indiana University, both the business school at Kelly and the law school at Maurer. So that was my entryway into tax by having 2 degrees and having that business background, and then also going on and working in tax.
So you went to a great law school and a great business school. Did you know you wanted to be a tax lawyer before you started?
Great question. I had done several private sector internships, both when I was in business school and when I was in law school. And so I had learned through talking to people in the field that I wanted to do some form of public service when I graduated. And so it wasn't until I started reaching out and talking to a lot of people that I learned about the Office of Chief Counsel, and that became my path. But I think it was really from working at so many different private sector places and learning how many tax professionals got their start in public service, whether it be at the tax court or Department of Justice or Office of Chief Counsel, that I thought it would be a great place to start my career.
So, Nicole, can you tell us a bit more about the Office of Chief Counsel?
So the Office of Chief Counsel, we call ourselves the world's largest tax law firm because we're entirely comprised of tax lawyers who represent the IRS. So we are the chief legal advisor to the IRS, which comes in all forms. It means we represent on field audits as well as litigation. And so we do a lot of work. The IRS is our client in terms of a private sector terminology. But we also work with Treasury. And so we have a dual working structure where we also work on regulations and guidance and revenue procedures. And all of those kinds of guidance projects also emanate from the Office of Chief Counsel.
Could you tell us how you got the job at Chief Counsel?
Sure. You would appreciate this. It is a Indiana University alumni story, where when I knew that I was going to be searching for a public service job, I started by going down into the career services office. And at that time, it was a huge binder and it had every alumni's name and where they worked. And so I started pulling out people who worked in tax and calling them and emailing them. And one of the people I spoke with, Nancy Knapp, who recently retired, she worked at the Office of Chief Counsel in DC. And so I had a conversation with her. And she said, I think this will be a great fit for you. I think with your background in accounting and your interest in this, you would be an immediate fit for the Manhattan office, given all of their financial work. And so she connected me with the Manhattan office, who was at that time, as luck would have it, because a lot of times government hiring can be luck, was interviewing for a honors hire, which is the program that it's called when you come directly from law school. And so mine was a Indiana University alumni connection.
So what advice do you have for students to prepare for a career in tax while they're in law school?
I think my first piece of advice would be to take as many tax classes as you can in as many different areas. I took a lot of great classes ranging from tax practice and procedure to partnerships to corporations and international tax, and all of them will help you throughout your career. Secondly, I think litigation classes. Sometimes people don't think tax lawyers are going into a courtroom, but I did. I actually, within 2 months of starting my job, I was in tax court, and Office of Chief Counsel attorneys are the sole litigators in tax court. So that's a big part of the work we do. Same thing, Department of Justice, a lot of litigation there. And lastly, I was very fortunate at Indiana University to have a great business school. And so I was able to take some interdisciplinary courses. I took a lot of accounting and finance, and I think all of those really help tax lawyers understand and have that language that their clients are speaking, because you understand what a financial statement is. You understand the documents that you're looking through, and it, I think, makes you better and easier to sort of talk to them and help them understand the issues that they're facing.
Nicole, we'd love to hear about some of your career highlights.
So in the Manhattan office, we're really lucky to have some of the most interesting cases, I think, in the nation. It is a huge financial center. And when I started, a lot of the work at that time was around tax promoters and the tax shelter litigation that was going on. And that was really driven out of my office. So I kind of started at this time that was very exciting. The office was buzzing. People were doing that kind of work, both in litigation and non-docketed, with the client. And so there was all of that work going on. And it then led into a lot of really interesting financial services, financial products work, because all of that is headquartered in the Manhattan office. even a lot of issues that came about from the financial crisis. And so there was never a shortage. I think the Manhattan office, you will never have a boring day because something exciting is always happening in Manhattan.
The work in Manhattan sounds so interesting, but I recall that you also had the opportunity to work in UK tax administration as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights, one of the best things that I did, both professionally and personally. So we had a program, it was created by our former Chief Counsel, Don Korb, where we had an exchange program with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. And so the way the program worked was they would send us an attorney and we would send them an attorney. And so I was selected probably 10 years ago, I think by now. And I worked for the Business International Group, who was in charge of a variety of international issues. And so I worked on negotiating treaties. I worked on litigation. I worked again on financial crisis related fallout issues. I really did a little bit of everything, and they were great about showing me all the different kind of work they do. And so besides being really exposed to how international tax works from the perspective of a foreign country's tax authority, I also had a great opportunity to meet a lot of people. And so some of the people I still keep in contact today from my time there. And they even were able to come, they came with me to the Manhattan office and got to give a presentation and explain the different ways that they do work. So overall, besides all of the great traveling and the great opportunity to live in London, it was just a great professional and personal experience.
So it sounds like it was a terrific time in the UK, and what an interesting career path to be opening up to the international aspects of US taxation. So tell me about what that might have changed in your career going forward as you went back home.
So I think when I got back, I became very interested in international tax more so than I had been before, because I had been exposed and I had been doing all of this great treaty work and information exchange work. And so right when I got back, my boss at the time, Roland Barrel, and I co-authored an article for the UK Tax Journal about the US summons power, which was a really interesting experience to write an article for a journal as a government attorney. And the article was just looking at the summons power from the US's perspective and trying to give a UK practitioner an overview and compare and contrast how that worked. And so that was great. And that sort of continued how I kept working on international. So after I got done with that, I started working entirely on withholding cases, so Chapter 3 and information exchange programs, and all of that kind of work became, I would say, the focus of my time because I had had this experience and I really started to develop more focus and more energy on those types of issues.
So in addition to the UK detail, I understand you did some details within the US. Can you talk a bit about those?
I think one of the best things about the government and about the Office of Chief Counsel is the ability to do these details. And so you get to live the life of another attorney and learn more things, meet more people, and experience all of these different groups. And so I've been fortunate to do a variety of things. I was a senior manager for the IRS. So for our client, I actually went and I supervised a group of revenue agents for 1 year as we were standing up a financial products practice. And so that was great because it gave me a really fresh level of experience of what that life is like and what it's like to work in the IRS and the challenges that a revenue agent may face. And then recently, I was lucky, I just did a detail to the national office of the Office of Chief Counsel, which is our DC headquarters. And the DC group is sort of organized by subject matter specialists. So these are the folks that are the experts in international tax. And they write, the regulations, they write your revenue procedure, your revenue rulings, all of those published guidance emanate from them. And so I worked in that branch doing treaty work and withholding work and all kinds of international work for 1 year, working on revenue procedures and even a regulation project. So a lot of good experience that you can do through the government.
Nicole, you've given a lot of presentations, and I remember one in particular where you were on a panel, I believe at the ABA tax section, about the tax whistleblower program, because you've done a lot of interesting work in that area. Can you tell us a little bit more about that work?
Sure. So yeah, and I remember that was great. And I think, again, one of the interesting things about the government is the ability to do things like speak at the ABA or speak at panels and attend all of those kind of conferences. But I did, back when the whistleblower program first stood up, I was one of the attorneys that was assigned to sort of help it grow. And so I did a lot of work in the whistleblower program right when it was enacted and right when we were trying to figure out what that process looked like and how that information would be used and shared. When you work for the government, you never really know what the next day could bring, and you have an opportunity to do a lot of interesting work.
I think students will be particularly interested to hear what advice you have on getting a job in government or at the Office of Chief Counsel.
Now has never been a better time to get a job in the government. There's a lot of hiring that's going on right now. In general, that hiring goes on through USAJobs.com. So that's the main site you should be looking at. And you can sign up for emails and alerts and registrations of when a new job gets posted. You know about that. You have to be within the timeline and the deadline, and all of those things matter when you're applying for government jobs. The second thing I would say is it's really helpful if you know people who work at the organization already. It's great to connect with them so you can understand more about the mission of the organization and be really prepared for the interview. And also have a heads up. I've oftentimes called people when I know that there's a posting coming or circulated it so that we can kind of get the knowledge out. So I think that's another way to help that process.
Well, Nicole, I think every student that's watching this is not only hearing about you and your personal path to a fascinating career with a lot of different areas that you're working in, but they also got a glimpse into this institution, the Office of Chief Counsel. So I really thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thanks so much, Nicole. It's been terrific learning more about the Office of Chief Counsel and all of the opportunities that it offers to tax lawyers.
Thank you guys for having me. It was really fun to have this conversation over Zoom today.
Thanks for joining us as you break into tax. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
And turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos.